All right, I'm reviewing this ancient arrow site and video from 2015. It's about lensing effects and crystals and time distortion, um, traveling near the speed of light, chrononauts are an evolutionary angle. So there's just some key concepts here that I want to review. One of them is calling crystals out by your mind or by higher vibrations, and what it's like through the Anderson Institute research that took research from Montauk about different ways to propagate waveforms. Quantum tunneling is an evanescent wave coupling effect. The correct wavelength combined with the proper tunneling barrier makes it possible to pass signals faster than light backwards in time, is the first research that they gathered. Light pulses consisting of waves of various frequencies shot toward a 10-centimeter chamber containing cesium. All information about the incoming pulse is contained in the leading edge of its waves. So this is like the membrane memory carrier, just like our brains work like that. And our brain cavity membrane holds the most crucial and most sensitive and best information. And that's why in abduction experiences and things, that the brain cavity and the fluids around the brain are sometimes tapped into, as well as with the bone marrow. This information is all the cesium atoms need to replicate the pulse and send it out to the other side, back to the cesium chamber. And pulses going through that cesium chamber. The information is all the cesium atoms need to replicate the pulse and send it out to the other side. An opposite wave rebounds inside the chamber, canceling out the main part of the incoming pulse as it enters the chamber. The new pulse, moving faster than the speed of light, has traveled about 60 feet beyond the chamber. So that's time displacement. The pulse has left the chamber before it finished entering, traveling backwards in time. So space gets displaced. Wave mechanical tunneling, governed by Schrodinger's wave equation, you can also plug into these theories that were experimented with and had results, tangible results coming out of them. And the Anderson Institute had a lot of diagrams, a lot of mathematical problems, and how they came to the knowledge of the King's Chamber and other things that they documented. Vector math, that was a big one there, and then NASA shared that information too. The leaked amplitude is interpreted physically as traveling energy or as a traveling particle. So they use square roots of things and Dome of the Rock and Knights Templar octagons in floor plans of certain architectural structures to inlay their secrets in places. The ratio of the square of the leaked. Hold on. Okay, the ratio of the square that they used leaked amplitude to the square of the incident amplitude gives the proportion of incident energy transmitted out the far side. So they had tools and instruments measuring ratios and utilization rates of different types of traveling energy and traveling particles. Particle tunnels through the barrier. The particles were observed going through different barriers. The universe, they figured, was a perpetual harmonic oscillator. Protons, electrons, neutrinos, and photons. For alpha particles tunneling out of the nucleus, the thickness was very much less. And then for the analogous phenomena involving light, the thickness got greater. So the photonic barrier is greater. A real delocalized object that obeys a wave equation and always has a positive kinetic energy can leak through a region if the conditions were right. An electron approaching a barrier has to be represented as a wave train. And they diagram these as tracks. Quantum tunneling was later applied to other situations like cold emission of electrons, semiconductors, super physics analysis. Superconductor physics is the blanket term for all of this, I guess. Field emission, important to flash memory, are explained also with quantum tunneling. And quantum microscopes also use a subtle form of quantum tunneling, scanning the surface of objects. Tunneling is a source of major current leakage in very large scale integration electronics, BLS1, and results in the substantial power drain and heating effects that plague high speed and mobile technologies. The vector changes with the polarity flip. The polarities change not only the vector, but the way the four forces are distributed. Classic versus nuclear. And in some of this obscure research, there was a lot of use of squares, formulas, ancient squares, magic squares, I guess you could call them, twin prime distributions of channel digital root differentials, twin magic, pairing, trinities of triangles, and trinities of magic squares also. Primarily 12, 15, and 18. Electron tunneling microscopes overcome the limiting effects of conventional microscopes because they have optical aberrations and different wavelength distributions. Tunneling electrons are what scan the surface of electron tunneling microscopes. So they wanted a traveler's eyes to become like that. Quantum tunneling has been known to be a mechanism used by enzymes to enhance reaction rates. Enzymes use tunneling to transfer electrons and nuclei like hydrogen and deuterium. Next. I'm going through slides, that's why there's lags, sorry. In the enzyme glucose oxidase process, oxygen nuclei can tunnel under physiological conditions. So they go underneath physicality and tangibility of objects too. Near light speed travel has the ability to significantly dilate time. Even if you approach the speed of light but don't reach the speed of light threshold, it still happens. And then we get into what's called Starts with an A. The Alcubierre warp drive. And this, again, is in the Anderson Research Institute. And this stretches space time in a wave, causing the fabric of space ahead of a spacecraft to contract. And then the space behind it expands out. So it's a first initial compression. The ship can ride the wave to accelerate to high speeds and time travel. Stretching the space in a wave, which would in theory cause the fabric of space ahead of a spacecraft to contract. It like bottles out at the front and then expands at the back to reach the desired and acquired velocity. The ship would ride this wave inside a region known as a warp bubble of flat space. So it's creating a time track by doing that. And the ship is not moving within this bubble, but carried along as the region itself moves, so relativistic effects like time dilation don't apply then within the core of it. A light beam within the bubble would still always move faster than the ship thanks to the contraction of the space in front of it, though. The ship could reach its destination faster than a light beam, restricted to traveling outside the warp bubble. So there's your ergosphere, your event horizon, fire in the sky, rainbow, rainbow like appearances. And then the Alcubierre metric warp bubble appears with this concept. A warp bubble appears in previously flat spacetime and moves off. At effectively superluminal speed, inhabitants of the bubble feel no inertial effects, though. So it's like a pocket that you've created. Objects within the bubble are not moving locally faster than light. So it's like time slows down in one spot and speeds up in another. The space around them shifts so that the object arrives at its destination faster than light would in normal speed. Near light speed travel is only to the future, not the past. Can have matter transport, information transport, technology that's viable, brought back, possible without exotic materials. The Alcubierre warp drive stretches spacetime in a wave, causing the fabric of space ahead of the spacecraft to contract and the space behind it to expand. It can ride the wave. The ship can ride the wave to accelerate the high speeds in time travel. Only to the future, not to the past. Matter transport, information transport, technically viable, without exotic materials and low input power. Generating enough exotic matter and sustaining it to perform feats like faster than light travel. Okay, there's just some formulas I'm going through. More formulas. It's impossible to construct a warp drive in the absence of exotic matter. Faster than light travel, according to special relativity. You can go to the future, past, with matter transport and information transport, with no special space-time geometry. When the ship is accelerating, it travels on a free-fall geodesic grid. The crew would experience no accelerational g-forces, free-fall form. Tidal forces would be present near the edges of the flat space volume because of the large space curvature there. These would be made very small within the volume occupied by the ship. A contraction of space ahead of the bubble and an expansion behind. And this is more organic research, and then this was contrasted to Masonic grids, which are artificial. So organic grids are like a keyhole to the seventh dimension. 1,067 gram equivalents might be required to transport a small spaceship across the Milky Way galaxy, because you have to take into effect the mass. Orders of magnitude are greater than the mass of the universe in the Milky Way galaxy. Less than 3 solar masses. And in the secret space program, you have to have a certain body mass to be able to sustain yourself in functionality modes. The pilot inside the bubble is causing disconnect within its walls. Okay, this is different theory. The pilot inside the bubble is causally disconnected within its walls and cannot okay. Sorry, I lost this slide. And cannot carry out any action outside the bubble. The pilot inside the bubble is causally disconnected within its walls, can't carry out any action outside the bubble. Okay, toroidal diagrams go with that. Tachyon fields. It's necessary to place devices along the route in advance. The bubble can't be used to the first trip to a distant star. Special relativity states this would require infinite energy. And there's formulas for infinite energy. At the speed of light, an object would have infinite momentum. To accelerate an object of non-zero rest mass would require infinite time within any finite acceleration. Infinite acceleration for a finite amount of time to create a pocket. Any travel that's faster than light will be seen as traveling backwards in time and some other equally valid frames of reference. Thermodynamical statistical nature, hence a symmetry take broken at some presently observed state in time-warped fields. They use energy within the curvatures of space-time around a rotating mass or energy field to generate containable and controllable fields of closed time-like curves that can move matter and information forwards and backwards in times. So TWF is the most desirable. General relativistic effects, subluminal speeds, special space-time geometry, and time-warped fields. There's a frame dragging precession and a geodetic precession. That can come before this. Moving with space rather than moving through space is the concept, to be fluid with that. and in a contained manner, so that your matter is compressed. Like compression waves of space-time are generated by a ship, which emits them from its hull in all directions until it's completely isolated from the rest of our universe. Compression waves isolates and perpetuates time waves. Emitting more gravity waves behind the ship, it stretches out its isolated bubble into an egg shape. Causing external space-time to squeeze in on the bubble unevenly, propelling the craft forward. Time passes normally within the isolated region, eliminating the possibility of paradox or time travel. No paradoxes allowed. When vacuum energy is lowered, light itself has been predicted to go faster than, I can't read this word, than the standard value. A single set of plates, since the plate's rest frame would define a preferred frame for FTL signaling. Feedback loops of virtual particles would create uncontrollable singularities in the renormalized quantum stress energy on the boundary of any potential time machine, and thus would require a theory of quantum gravity to fully analyze. Mechanisms allowed by general relativity, wormholes will allow traveling between 2 points without going through the intervening spaces. Circulating light beams are gamma magnetic fields and can be used to create circulating light beams to warp or loop time. The approach can twist space and cause time to be twisted. You could theoretically walk through time as you walk through space. And that's where you get into time walls. Circulating light beams are subliminal, special relativistic, future, past, transport, and without the use of exotic materials. It's possible for the objects to be moving apart faster than light because of the expansion of the universe, too. So, this is where you get into signals and relay systems. And if your body has been adjusted and calibrated to not turn into scrambled eggs within the egg bubble, then you can be pushed farther into these programs. Two objects passing each other in a small local region of space-time will move more slowly than a light beam that passes through the region. Wormholes are warp space-time that can create tunnels through space-time and allows a traveler to move through great distances in space and travel through time. They're not technically viable, though. They're general relativistic, subliminal speed, and require special space-time geometry to fuse the ends into hyperspace that is the fold and the middle portion of it. Well, hyperspace is on all sides of it, actually. Rapid transport between points in hyperspace, subspace requires special relativity and is often assumed not to apply in this other realm. Distant points in the mundane universe correspond to points that are close together in hyperspace. Galaxies which are at a distance of more than about 14 billion light years from us today have a recession velocity faster than light. Then we get cosmic strings. That deflect in the fabric of space-time that's left over from the formation of the universe. They're not technically viable, and they interact, creating fields of closed time-like curves permitting backwards time travel. Cosmic strings have low matter transport, information transport, and travelers moving through the wormhole would not locally move faster than light, which travels through the wormhole alongside of them. They would be able to reach their destination and return to their starting location faster than light traveling outside of the wormhole. And then we get a triple cylinder, which uses a massive and long cylinder spinning around its longitudinal axis. This rotation creates a frame dragging effect and is only for the past and not for the future. Subluminal speed. It is technically viable with information transport, matter transport. Closed time-like curves formation using rotating cylinder models. There's a lot of diagrams of this. It's more of a cone-like structure within that creates the outcome of a toroidal field. Manipulating the 10th spatial dimension would alter the dark energy in 3 large spatial dimensions, height, width, and length. The Casimir effect is a physical force arising from a quantized field between 2 uncharged plates, producing locally massed negative regions of spacetime that could stabilize a wormhole to allow faster than light travel, only to the past, with the use of special geometry, subluminal speed, and quantum electrodynamic forces being the effect here. And it is technically viable. Positive dark energy is currently responsible for speeding up the expansion rate of our universe as time moves on. Which another word for that is entropy. Space-time distortions caused by gravity are fundamentally identical to space-time distortions caused simply by accelerating your reference frame. So that's like a mirroring effect with your frame of reference. And then you have perception gaps in between those. And there's lots of diagrams about cosmogenesis, universal field, fractal involutions. And you don't want to get into recursions. Circumference of a circle radius 1000 AU is greater than 1. Oops, lost my slide. Greater than 1 light day. Alpha Centauri is 4 light years away, for example. The phase velocity of an electromagnetic wave when traveling through a medium can routinely exceed the vacuum velocity of light. Evanescent waves do not propagate protons, but instead protons that cross the barrier are virtual photons only existing within the interaction. Photons crossing the barrier are virtual photons only existing in the interaction. This is where you get lenses. Time-warped fields use energy within curvatures of space-time surrounding a rotating mass energy field to generate containable and controllable fields of closed time-like curves that can move matter and information forward or backward in time. Rotating bodies drag space-time around themselves in a phenomenon that's frame dragging. The smallest twist in spacetime contains enormous energy potential and can be used to create containable and controllable fields of closed time-like waves without the need for significant input power. Then we get the Anderson time reactor or space-time battery, which couples 2 different areas of twisted spacetime with 2 different spacetime tensions that can access and create a conduit to harvest that stored energy, and through the coupling process create dense fields of closed time-like curves, CTCs. A region of space, time, large or small, surrounding a rotating mass where inertial frame dragging effects are there. A specialized beam emitter with a localized source near to the rotating mass is directed toward a more distant region of space. Power collectors near and surrounding the beam emitter provide a conduit to then channel and control the received power. So this is receiving and transmitting, going from point A to point B. Potential energy in the twisted fabric of spacetime is coupled or bridged from the distant point to the local power collector array. The ability to leak, tap into, and control the greater energy stored in the spacetime tension or energy potential difference between the distant point and the localized point in spacetime. This is where you get like handheld devices to open spacetime motive forces, and time portals and the time gates and all the things that I've mentioned between the distant point and the localized point in spacetime. You're creating opening spacetime motive force. Between the distant point and the localized point in spacetime. Open spacetime motive force produces more than all of the world's combined generation capabilities today. The rotating mass creates a twist in the fabric of spacetime whose natural state and desire is to unwind like a spinning or to discharge just like a battery, a spring, to unwind like a spring. It uses relatively low input power to open or to discharge a path. Walk through time as you walk through space is the concept. Closed time-like lines for rotating Kerr black holes, Van Stockham rotating dust cylinders in the rotating universe of Gödel were some of the names for this. Traveling close to the speed of light will slow a clock, even an atomic clock. A clock outside our atmosphere, far away from any gravitational pull, will run faster, though. If an artificial gravitational force were created, time travel would, in theory, be possible. By trapping light inside a photonic crystal, you cause it to circulate. And this is where you can get into artificial wormholes. Energy of the circulating light will cause the space inside the circle to twist, causing a gravitational force. Like a spoon stirring a pot, the light is the spoon rotating around the inner rim of the pot. The space is the liquid being swirled by the spoon. As the space twists, it will coil the normally linear passage of time along with it, spiraling the past, present, and future together into one continuous loop. Polarized neutrons twist space inside a crystal. Time connects differently through the wormhole than outside, so that synchronized clocks at each mouth will remain. Or month, I don't know. Synchronized to someone traveling through the wormhole itself, no matter how the mouths move. Okay, wormhole mouths. Cosmic strings are a hypothetical one-dimensional spatial topological defect in the fabric of space-time left over from the formation of the universe, essentially. Cosmic strings. Spatially topological defect. Gravitational lensing of a galaxy by a straight section of a cosmic string would produce two identical, undistorted images of each other. Of the galaxy. Gravitational lensing images of the galaxy. Chronology, protection, conjecture. Casimir effect plays an important role in the chiral bag model of the nucleon and in nanotech. In the structure of harmonic universes, there are two timelines per dimensional octave. There is a bifurcation in the planetary field between creations or bodies formed in the third dimensional frequencies in the telluric matter, and those creations and bodies formed above those frequencies. The separation is occurring between the dead energy, miasma, that is projected out through the use of military machinery and the organic living consciousness bodies that exist in the higher dimensions of future timelines. Swarm intelligence can be used to collect artificial frequencies to manifest artificial or virtual realities for projecting holograms, so that a group of people believe that it's real and intentional, and they intentionally bend universal laws through forced light refraction, holographic inserts, and replication of DNA code that's designed to enslave. So we choose our consent in our highest battles. And some of these things I mentioned also are for the can help you understand the binary universe, and that we're basically living in a allowed to live in a portion of the Elohim's brain. And our highest self, our avatar selves, basically is seated in heavenly places when your spirit is seated in heavenly places, ruling and reigning with Christ. And he created our systems as like an avatar system. When he came to earth to show us he's fully God, fully human, and that we are also a tripartite nature, spirit, body, and soul, working completely separate from each other. So the sea also has grids and ley lines and lots of things hidden within that that can also manipulate the morphogenetic fields of the earth. A telluric current or earth current is an electric current which moves underground through the sea and ley lines, continuously moving between the sunlight and shadowed sides of the earth towards the equator, on the side of the earth facing the sun during the day, and toward the poles in the night of the night side of the planet. Through the earth substrata, it generates low frequency windows that act as a conductor for carrier wave frequencies. Sunlight can be directed to power AI technology, which moves in frequency carrier waves with a telluric current towards the equator. The equator is the area of the planet where things are based in order to harvest vast amounts of energy. This is antediluvian. Artificial frequencies are much stronger during the day when there's a strong sunshine, bright light around them. Okay, so quantum tunneling can be also applied to the antediluvian um, history and shifts that happened there in the tunneling, which actually created the underground bases. And that's why a lot of them have already been blown up and destroyed, and some of them haven't been able to be cleansed. So we get these things in our system that tunnels under our cells, making us sick. We have bonds with illness and disease, which aren't natural to our nature. And all this goes back to the antediluvian time period and even to the fall. So there's lots of remedies on these slides too. I won't go into them though. Spiritual alchemy, sulfur, um, spiritual diseases, salt and sulfur mixes deep in the earth, holding symbols of our physical body. To unify with solar plasma light for transfiguration into eternal gold body. And this goes into the dynamics of the sanctity of the sun and the light healing that can come from the sun. We are our own time capsules exteriorized through conglomerate force and cyclimic infusions of subatomic convectors.